Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Byron. I'll be your host tonight. I missed you all a lot, and we have a very special show tonight. It's not exactly a show, but it's a session.
Show.
In a sense, it's a show, a showing up. Thanks for showing up, and we're blessed to have our three speakers. You know who they are. And we're going to start tonight with a prayer by our friend Rob Davis. So Rob, why don't you start us off?
Oh, okay. Well, what I thought I would do with this time is to suggest an idea, a thought, and allow us maybe a few minutes to be in silent prayer together. Can you hear me, Byron, or anyone?
Fine. Somebody needs to mute themselves who's doing something in the background. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was just going to begin with the thought that in relation to what I would be talking about at the end of the meeting, that we are indeed light in life. A way to begin this might be to consider the night sky that we look at and consider the infinite expanse that we witness in the night sky. And then, after looking at it and marveling at its infinite depth and beauty, pause to reflect that that same depth and beauty is within us, and that what we are seeing is an outward reflection of what we hold within us, and that it is our privilege to explore as children of God. And if we could just pause for a moment, maybe just 3 minutes, and allow ourselves to ponder just the unfathomable gift that this infinite depth within us is, in fact and in truth. I will close with this prayer, just close this moment anyway. Heavenly Father, thank you for planting within us this infinite seed of your being, some of which we are unfolding in this moment with tools that you have already planted within us that we have discovered. But it's only inviting us to discover more wonders that you are within us all.
Thank you very much, Rob. Really appreciate that very much. And just to remind everybody of our theme for tonight, it's a single word theme. The word I've been trying to introduce, which is prolepsis, a theological term for the idea that the future is acting upon us. And Rob mentioned about what's unfolding in the present. And according to much theology, including Urantia book theology, the first cause of the creation of all things by the Father emanates into all of time, in all of time and space, but also the future destiny of the universe is emanating backwards from the future. It's the idea that, in a sense, God is acting on us from the future, as well as from the first cause, the cause of creation. So that what we call the last cause, two types of causes, first cause and last cause, final cause, as it was called in Greek philosophy, is the final cause is acting on us. And for us, light and life is acting on us from the future, is coming to us from the future in a sense, and we're moving toward it. So that's our theme for tonight, and we have variations on the theme, and hope that the speakers can try to weave that into what they have to say. And so now I'm going to introduce someone I think everybody knows, Barbara Kazin from Santa Fe, who has a special presentation along this line that I think you saw in the email. So I'll let her launch into our first presentation. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you, Byron. It's so good to be with all of you again tonight. As Byron said, the theme of our meeting is the assumption of a future act as if it's presently existing or accomplished. There are many places in the Urantia book where they tell us that God looks at us as if we're already in the core of finaliters, that we already have fused. We've made that decision. And there's a beautiful quote in paper 109 when talking about the self-acting adjusters. It says, when a person has made the supreme decision, has entered into a solemn and sincere betrothal with the adjuster looks beforehand to the time of actual fusion and reckons the union as an event of fact. That sounds so much like Byron's theme for our presentation tonight. When we were studying God the Supreme recently in our group, there was a sentence that jumped out at me that said, the presence of thought adjusters in mortal man reveals the essential unity of the universe. For man, the lowest possible type of universe personality contains within himself an actual fragment of the highest and eternal reality, even the original father of all personalities. That's as our meditation was today, to visualize the concept that the vast universe that we look at, and that universes we can't see, the creator of all of that actually resides within us. When the spirit of Christ Michael was bestowed on mankind at Pentecost, that prepared all normal men's minds for the bestowal of this fragment of God. So in a sense, as Byron reminded me, Pentecost was the original illumination of all minds on our planet, and actually other planets as well. The spirit of truth was bestowed upon every soul in accordance with the love for truth and their capacity to grasp and comprehend spiritual realities. Yet despite the fact that virtually all men on this earth have this indwelling spirit, very few of them actually recognize that. And the reason we're told for this is the Lucifer agenda, which was implemented by our planetary prince, Caligastio, when he chose to align himself with Lucifer, felt that it would be better for Lucifer's agenda if we were ignorant of the presence of God within us. And this blindness has continued to the present day. And it's this blindness to the truth that the magisterial mission is coming to help, as well as all of the spiritual forces that are there now. If you'll remember, the first part of Lucifer's manifesto was that the universal Father does not exist. What a shocking statement for him to say. Yet there were so many that followed him and continue to follow that today in our society. In the Magisterial Son and Seraphic Collaboration call that Donna transmitted on February 28th, very recently, Monjorzen told us Lucifer wanted his system to reflect his own thinking and design. And in that deviation, he took it upon himself to interfere with our ability to perceive the Father. So in these correcting times, we're experiencing unprecedented infusion of spiritual influences. And we're told that the thought adjuster circuits have been enhanced so that we can hear more, the angels can hear more, our angels can help us to work closer with our thought adjuster. The book that I wanted to reference tonight is called The Miracle of Illumination of All Consciousness. It was written in 2003. The author was the president of the Pittsburgh Center for Peace, and he was a great follower of the Fatima apparitions. And he's written many, many books about that. The miracle throughout time, since the 16th century, has been spoken of as a great day, a day when every person on earth will simultaneously see the state of their soul through God's eyes, after which the world will never be the same. She lists in the book prophets that have come over time since the 16th century that have all said the similar thing, that this miracle could occur. One Venerable Halter died in 1658. He said, "The hand of Almighty God will work a marvelous change, something apparently impossible according to human understanding." Elizabeth Canori Mora died in 1825. She said, "A great light will appear on the earth, which will be a sign of the reconciliation of God with man." Blessed Anna Marie Taggi died in 1836 and said, "A great purification will come upon the world, preceded by an illumination of conscience, in which everyone will see themselves as God sees them." Mayans, who died in 1854, said, "The good God shall save all. It'll be like a sign or the last judgment." There have been similar prophecies by visionaries all up until the time of the writing of that book in 2003. I'll try to give you a brief summation of all that they've said, because I think you're going to be amazed at how that ties in to our very own Chris Morris's writings on the day of equilibrium and his visions. The great transformation that will occur from the illumination will be unlike any religious transformation before, for it'll come totally from within, not without. It'll come from deep within hearts. Our response to the illumination will be like a declaration of love for the Father, but God will not force his will on anyone. Each person will have a different degree of response to the awakening. The miracle cannot be prevented. It'll only last a short time. From this miracle, all souls will know that God exists, although they can still reject that knowledge. Many will reject the illumination and move even farther away from God. The illumination will be seen and felt. The miracle will be experienced everywhere at the same time. The illumination will, in essence, be a miracle of the heart, from God's heart to the hearts of his children. There are other popular sites that have talked about this. I'll just mention one. A website is entitled Prepare for Change, that was established in 2013. On their homepage, they refer to a planetary shift called the event. The call is for the victory of light. They say the energy from the central sun will stimulate a flash or special kind of light from the sun that will permeate the earth and humanity, raising the frequencies of all living entities on the planet. The unfolding of love and truth has been written about and spoken of by the great prophets, sages, and mystics of all cultures for thousands of years. It's the truth that Manjoransin tells us has to come out. And we are being called upon to help to illuminate minds of our brothers and sisters so that they can see the truth. In Chris's day of equilibrium, and I hope he talks about it again today, he described vivid dreams and visions that he's had over the years, which are virtually identical to these prophecies since the 16th century. He sees every man-made system in the world suddenly stop. All people worldwide stop what they're doing, get out of their cars, beds, cubicles, and appointments, and stare into space as if they're astonished by some invisible presence. But not outside of them inside from their own mind and consciousness. He describes the feeling as a divine and loving vibration that sweeps through every cell of your body, a peace that surpasses all understanding, which St. Paul talked about. And you feel a profound sense of well-being. You're enraptured in a blanket of warm ecstasy. Thoughts begin flooding your mind from a source of great love and authority. And there's an understanding in these thoughts at a higher level than your present awareness can comprehend, but you instinctively understand all that is conveyed. Isn't this as the visionaries told us? And Chris wasn't aware of the miracle of illumination.
No, I have not read any of those, and it's astonishing to hear that now how close that is to my own experience.
And we all recognize a disdain for being rescued by miracles. But remember, we were told in the Urantia book that because revealed truth was threatened with extinction after the Adamic default, that Macaventa Melchizedek volunteered to do something which had been done only 6 times in the whole history of Nebadon, to personalize on earth as a temporary man of the realm, to bestow himself as an emergency son of world ministry. And we're told, we well understand how by his triumph on Urantia, Michael became the successor of both Caligastia and Adam, how he became the planetary prince of peace and the second Adam. And now we behold the conferring upon this Melchizedek the title Vicegerent Planetary Prince of Urantia. Will he also be constituted Vicegerent Material Son of Urantia? Or is there a possibility that an unexpected and unprecedented event is to take place? Sometime return to the planet of Adam and Eve, certain of their progeny as representatives of Michael, with the titles of vicegerents of the second Adam. We know that Christ Michael has said he's coming back. And one thing is very clear that I think we should all keep in mind in considering the possibility. Michael, as a master son, can freely rule his universe in accordance with his concepts of our needs. We're told in paper 21, which I think is the key to all of this discussion, a master son may at will vary the order of the spiritual adjudication, which is what we're going through now, and evolutionary adjustment of the inhabited planets. And such sons do make and carry out the plans of their own choosing in all matters of special planetary needs, in particular regarding the worlds of their creature sojourn, and still more concerning the realm of terminal bestowal, the planet of incarnation in the likeness of mortal flesh, our very own Urantia. In the transmissions by Donna of Manjorian's messages, we're being asked to focus on moral courage and clear perception to infuse the mind circuit so our brothers and sisters can feel the fortifying energy that will enhance their ability to recognize right from wrong, truth over error, goodness over evil, and to have the fortitude and strength to let their minds be moved in that direction. And in Chris's most recent 11/11, on March 18th, We're told that because of the unusual circumstances throughout our planetary history in the Lucifer Rebellion that changed the intended path of our evolution, there are now countermeasures in place to carefully guide souls during the transition period, that they may become more aware that they are the beloved children of a loving Creator Father. These enhanced circuits are working to bring the dark consciousness to light so that deception is more easily discerned and questioned. Progress is the result of light shining on darkness, they tell us. So perhaps at the point of sufficient mass consciousness, the miracle of illumination, Chris's vision could occur, which would then set the stage for any one of the unexpected and unprecedented events that have been described in the Urantia book. And the magisterial mission, Jorensen talked about this morning and said, it is here. And he said, it is greater than you can possibly imagine. So I think we're being asked to bring this into focus and help the planetary seraphim, Jorensen, Melchizedek, Christ Michael, and our Father to help the magisterial mission accomplish its goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And before we get into discussion, I found an excerpt in the recording of Donna's transmission, which I want to bring up on screen and play for you guys a couple of minutes. And some of this was quoted by Barbara, but I think it would really help our discussion to hear this. Well, it's not live, but it's the recording from this morning. So here we go, and please listen because it's a little bit. It's not as loud as it should be, but here we go.
Humanity has had many challenges in appreciating divine mercy missions to this world. Careful, deliberate preparations are underway to secure those among you of the collective of humanity getting you in a place, a state of mind and being where you are ready to engage with us. We understand that sometimes human impatience has fostered certain notions about what this mission is and what it is here to accomplish. But truly, I say to you, it is greater than you can possibly imagine. And so in this infusion today, we are grounding you in some of these very important components and dynamics to render you more stable and secure as more truth is revealed to the masses and the moral courage humanity needs to awaken to what has occurred upon this planet. Are you ready for this? You may think you are, but are you really ready? Do you have any idea of what it means to stand in front of a divine being.
I'll stop there and let us contemplate that just for a few moments before we begin some discussion. Guess we're getting each other ready for this this event, and it's interesting that this movement that I'd never heard of, quite a large movement, believes there'll be this event, the event, capital E. And over the months, I've run into other groups that have the same notion. And it's kind of remarkable that throughout the planet, people do have an expectation of this moment. And this is, again, the prolepsis, you might say, of the future coming into the present to prepare us to be ready for what's coming. But I think of it not as sort of unearned miracles, but something we earned. It's sort of like our graduation moment, which I think, if you look back on the Pentecost was also like something earned by humanity. We got to a certain place in the Roman Empire and in the empires of Asia, and there was a certain maturity. And then Jesus comes, and then we have the Pentecost, and then we have the distribution of thought adjusters. So I think we have a moment like that coming up ahead, which we have earned. I also think of it as being compensatory for the suffering of the last century. That's another discussion maybe for another time, but I'll leave it at that and just open for a few minutes. We have two more speakers coming, and so we'll keep it brief, but any responses to Barbara or myself? Just go ahead and speak up.
As I said before, it was astonishing to hear the words that Barbara spoke about the others throughout history that have had this very, very similar vision. In fact, as she was calling out the names of each of these persons in history, I was just lighting up in high vibration the whole time. And if any of you read that paper, The Day of Equilibrium, the last paragraph, I believe, or second from the last paragraph, I stated that everything that I explained as the experience of equilibrium, aside from time standing still, was not a fiction, but was an actual experience that I had in my 27th year. I experienced this state of equilibrium with my thought adjuster, and it's taken the rest of my life up until now to try to understand exactly what that experience in its totality means to me. And I have had several vivid dreams of this moment. And writing that paper, I felt very, very compelled to do it at this time. It came from a very deep place within me. And it feels different now than a lot of these other things that other spiritual movements that you hear about. It just has a different feeling. And to me, it's very personal. Very personal. And I was also this weekend I was looking at some of the Apollo astronauts that have had these epiphanies in space and having these moments of what they describe as unity consciousness. which is what we're talking about in the day of equilibrium, is a moment of unity consciousness. And I was just talking to Carolyn before before this meeting here about this, and I was saying, you know, what was it with the astronauts being up in space, and this ties into what Rob Davis is saying about seeing the creation before you. And I think it's not that they were, you know, thousands of miles out in space, but it was the beholding such incredible beauty in that moment. It brought them to a place in their soul where uh, uh, they were equalized with divine mind. They saw the beauty as the Creator sees it for just a moment, and that equilibrium point, when you are in that moment, is where the adjuster then can infuse this incredible unconditional love and acceptance on you. And I think this is what happens to people when they bring their mind to this place. And they weren't necessarily spiritual people before that moment, nor was I the day that it happened to me. But it takes a certain amount of human will and openness and honesty and sincerity to bring you to this place where the adjuster can impart this feeling of unity consciousness on you. And I think this day of equilibrium, or the day of the illumination, is that place where we will all feel this unity.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Well said.
Byron?
Yes, please.
I have a question. I think when Barbara was speaking, she said something like the time is now. Am I correct? And did I hear it right, Barbara?
When Monjorensen started talking, the first thing he said is the magisterial mission is here.
Oh, it's here. Okay.
To help humanity move forward.
But he didn't give a time element.
He
So
said it's
the assumption
here.
is it's here now. It's already started. I'm just trying to get a sense of timing, if I'm going to be around for it or not. They better hurry up. I'm getting older.
No, I think it ties in exactly to what Byron's been saying. As far as Monjorensen is concerned, the magisterial mission is here. What he said is that they need our help in order to manifest it so that they can come and be one of us. He said that so that he and those coming with him could be one of us. And boy, it sent shockwaves through me when he said, are you ready for this? Are you really ready? and trying to imagine being in the presence of a divine being that's pretty
Did he give you a clue as to what being ready means?
Yeah, are you really ready? That was, Byron, that was wonderful that you played that again. That shook me to my core.
Thank you.
Byron,
Yes.
don't want to take too much time because we have other speakers, but I so appreciate people integrating all of this in this meeting. I wanted to address the being ready part. I know that a lot of people at different times in their lives have experienced light. They sometimes call it white light. I just had a conversation with someone who described it as that. Another friend of mine calls it angel light. But I think just encouraging people to share their special moments and finding the commonality of light in those moments might be helpful to our acquaintances and people that we want to be better prepared or ready for this. That's all. Just oh, and another date that's coming around in Urantia movement circles is 2030, because I think everyone here knows that that's literally the 2000th anniversary of Michael's bestowal. We just have a feeling of let's just go as far as we can and do as well as we can up through 2030.
Thank you. Thank you. We should all live in California because that's what we do all the time when I live there. When we're at the tofu bar, we would share our spiritual experiences of light and unity. And anyway, but now that I'm on the East Coast, it's pretty rare.
I don't know where we are in the Midwest, but not nearly there.
Yeah, not too much in Chicago.
No.
So thank you very much. We probably should move on. And I'm just thinking about, that movie, The Day That the Earth Stood Still, which is in a way a kind of foreshadowing in science fiction of this and standing still. But we've been told to sit still, but you can stand still too and be in stillness. Now I'd like to introduce Dave Tenney. You all know Dave, and Dave has a unique and special perspective on what we're talking about. He calls it love-based living and much more. So Dave, are you there? I'm gonna turn it over to you, Dave.
Okay, yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, first, I'd just like to acknowledge my beloved Meredith, who was here, who initiated the Light and Life groups with Byron and Rob and I, who is here with me tonight. We're there at the time, and I'm sure she's smiling down, and I have a sense that she's present with us. I'd like to offer a approach or a pathway to light and life that I think I hope will be of value, and I see it as a means of cultivating conscious awareness of living in light and life individually, but also as one that can help all of us move collectively towards that. So I have a little PowerPoint that I'm hoping will work. So I'm going to start with just a few quotes from the Urantia book. Devote your life to proving that love is the greatest thing in the world. God is love. Love is the desire to do good to others. There lives within each and all of us a fragment of infinity. Therefore, your nearest and dearest approach to God is by and through love, for God is love. And I think those quotes kind of set the stage for thinking about a love-based living approach to life. And I'll continue on with a few more. Religious living consists in the task of unifying the soul powers of the personality by the dominance of love. Health, mental efficiency, and happiness arise from the unification of physical systems, mind systems, and spirit systems.
Dave, the screen is not showing, at least here. It's the sharing isn't happening, the screen sharing.
Oh.
So go back and click on screen, share screen at the bottom middle.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to do that. Rob?
I hope you don't have to leave and then come back. Let's see, we can go to
There's a little arrow on the side, the right side of share screen, and press the little arrow and then press the line in the middle. Allow participants.
See, you need to maximize that. That's what he's talking about right there. Now, go up there. He's talking about upper right hand corner. No, or try right there. See, in this minimized version. No, okay. You better turn that back on so you can see. Turn this back on so you can see. And now maximize that. And now go. All right, so
Screen sharing.
there you go. Okay. Go ahead and click on your 10 slides. There you go.
Great.
Okay, well, sorry about that, everyone. So, a working definition of love or love-based living that I culled from research in philosophy and religion and psychology when I was doing my dissertation is that love can generally be understood as the use of the principle, power, or presence of a compassionate, benevolent intention for another's fullest well-being. And I think that one another includes oneself, others, and the whole of life and all universe personalities. So just following up on an earlier quote there, how can we let love dominate our life? When we practice a more love-based way of living in 7, I believe, interrelated aspects of our lives, it can lead to optimal well-being and to the personal experience of living in God's light and life now. And as parts of the whole, help the unfolding of light and life for everyone. We can be more loving in the spiritual aspect of life by regularly making time to experience God's loving presence within, seeking God's will, consecrating our will to God, practicing loving service, living more consciously in each particular moment of the eternal now, in the midst of infinity. Those are just a few examples. Part of my model or approach is the second aspect of life would be the mindful aspect of life. So by attuning attention to God's will, setting the intention to be loving, having an attitude of gratitude are a few examples in that aspect of life, of how we can move in that direction. We can be more loving in the physical aspect of life by taking better care of ourselves with healthy food, sleep, and balancing relaxation and activation. We can be more loving in what I call the relational aspect of life by reaching out lovingly to others, loving service, extending loving forgiveness to others, practicing the golden rule, loving others as Jesus or God would do. We can be more loving in the behavioral aspect of life by cultivating more positive habits in all 6 of the other aspects of life that I'll be reviewing. So, for example, in the spiritual aspect of life, cultivating a habit like Gar Jameson talks about of having a regular set time every day of a divine appointment would be one example of a positive habit that you'd be cultivating in that aspect. We can be more loving in the emotional aspect of life by seeking greater balance and self-mastery and using cosmic humor. And lastly, in what I call the environmental aspect of life, we can be more loving by having regular time in nature, by living in greater harmony with our planetary ecosystem, by increasing awareness of how to help heal our home planet, and by being conscious of living within the enlarged context of our UB cosmological framework and perspective. I think all of that can help us individually to and collectively to be living more in a consciousness of light and life. So just a few more brief quotes. Man can discover the Father in his heart, but he will have to search for the Supreme in the hearts of all other men. And when all creatures perfectly reveal the love of the Supreme, then will the universes be settled in light and life. So, meanwhile, we can each individually start to live in light and life now by being aware of God living in us and us living in God, doing God's will in this particular moment of eternity and every moment of eternity as consciously as we're able, by practicing love-based living in all aspects of our life and simply living, loving, and loving living. Another quote, human beings can actually feel, literally experience the full and undiminished impact of such an infinite Father's love. All true love is from God. God's love can become real only by passing through our personalities, our individual personalities, our unique selves, as we in turn bestow this love upon each other. What the UB calls the Great Circuit of Love is from God through each of us, sons and daughters, to all of our brothers and sisters, and hence to the Supreme. And thus love can make more real one's personal experience of living in light and life, and potentially have it be more fully shared by all, since when each individual can consciously live in that reality and be immersed in God's love and God's light and God's life, then I believe that expands and directly influences all other parts of the whole. So at this point, I'd like to just invite everyone to take a few minutes and just settle into your chairs and close your eyes if you'd like. Let your breath be gradually a little bit slower, a little bit deeper, a little more rhythmic. And just gradually open and invite your thought adjuster to conduct your worshipful experience, your communion experience within. Just consent to his doing so. And go within to that living and loving divine presence, that loving divine presence, that light-filled and life-filled divine presence within you. And let's just tune in to that within for a while in silence and stillness. continue on, just attending, bring your attention within to that love and light and life within you. Perhaps being aware that each one of our divine beloveds within is in unison, co-conducting this communion time with us. So all of our divine beloveds are sharing this inner experience of love and light and life with us, expanding that awareness. Imagine or be aware of perhaps your angels, likewise, being present, participating, sharing in this loving and light-filled life in this moment of eternity. And while we're all gathered here, Michael too would be present, sharing this with us. Open to Mother's divine, ever present, everywhere present, loving presence. And we can open our awareness to perhaps many other circles of our cosmic family being present, sharing in this time with us. Any number of others of our celestial friends and overseers. I invite their presence. So inner circles of adjusters, circles of angels, circles of other unseen friends on many levels, surrounding us and circling us, sharing in our love in this time of light and life within, and this time of communion together. And I'd like to invite each and all of you to gradually open your eyes and gaze at each other that are here on our screen. And perhaps extend your arms horizontally, creating a circle with each other here. A virtual circle, nonetheless, but just imagine this virtual circle in which we are all embracing each other, sending love and light and life from within, from our inner experience, to one another in our outer experience. And thereby furthering that divine circuit of love with one another. And may we carry that forward and continue expanding this circle as we continue on tonight and after. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. You all can see therein what a genuine mystic Dave is. Powerful mystic. And when I was in the presence of Dave and Mare, I always felt this presence of, well, light and life. So thanks for evoking it again, Dave, as you always do. Well, so now, oops, quite an echo there. I think we better move on to our next speaker, Rob Davis, known to you all. And I invite you, Rob, to launch right in. We have I guess we have a tradition, you guys, of staying afterwards for casual, informal discussion. So you're welcome to do that. We'll end with Q&A with Rob, and then move into this more open mic discussion after that, as far as you want to go. All right, Rob, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Well, first, Byron, let me say that I want to thank you for introducing the concept of prolepsis into the circle here, of which this is the first time I've been part of. So I'm grateful to and honored just to be with this group of people, some of whom I do know, and I hope to get to know others. But I would add, Byron, that prolepsis, while it's drawing from the future into the present, prolepsis has its counterpart called analepsis, which in its archaic meaning meant to ascend to heaven. In its more current meaning, it means drawing from the past into the present.
Yeah.
And so I would begin this short talk here with the idea that we, being creatures born in time, but destined for eternity, well, we actually are eternal beings in truth. In fact, we might not have become, depending on certain circumstances, but the fact is that who we are, our personality, and our human personality and our divine identity, i.e. the thought adjuster, they are who we are. One is unique and the other is uniform. That uniform light of the Father's being is what illumines our faces to one another. And yet it has meaning because of that very human face that we all wear uniquely. And because we are human, there is this, I guess you'd say, a form of judgment, reflecting the attitude that, well, we're not quite enough. We're not there yet. We haven't achieved whatever. Whatever in our minds is something that has yet to be achieved, that we're, seeking to attain. What I'm doing is not good enough. That is not an uncommon refrain in the human experience, especially in this world, where the sense of unworthiness just permeates and cripples human beings everywhere. And we must then realize that that we are exactly where we should be, perfectly positioned in this moment to take our next step. And from the perspective of spirit, we are exactly where we need to be. We need not be concerned, are we ready for such a thing as what we want? Because we are being prepared in this moment and in every moment. So I offer that thought as a way of suggesting to embrace, as the Urantia text well says, that the measure of maturity can be seen in the degree of the intensity with which we live in this moment, knowing that in this moment is contained all the potential that streams from the past and extends into the future. And in fact, all of time itself is like a tidal flow of the eternal. And it's extending itself through our very finite and very human lives, each one of which, each struggle with which we maintain some effort, is intensely meaningful to everyone and to the whole. There have been a number of references earlier to the historic, you might say, historic incidents wherein individuals have experienced this event that Chris has reported in his own relatively present experience. So it's another example of the fact that this has been in the past envisioned, and it points to a future moment. But that moment will come and go. It'll be a great moment and a memorable moment, one that probably will etch our souls forever and inform our eternal service. But it becomes very important to realize that the achievement, the realization of light and life on a planetary whole or in any collective configuration is dependent upon individual initiatives to enter into that light and life. That, in truth, we are. We have been since the beginning. Light is revelation. Life is the evolutionary form, and we are the meeting of these two. And we have discerned that this light is the presence of God in us, this inner luminosity that transforms our minds, that becomes the light which so shines as to bless all others. It always has been this light, and it always will be. And yet life itself, the infinite forms of life, are this light becoming reflected in a pure, unadulterated manner. A luminosity that is directed and refracted, and it is visible in and through us all, each of us. And this is the way forward, because God desires to experience our limitations, our struggles, the full spectrum in the display of luminosity. Most persons that have reached some degree of maturity realize that time and timing are really inseparable. We have a term called synchronicity, which is indicative of an awareness of a moment in time when everything seems to be something more than just this moment in time. But timing is surely one of the most important things for living in and with time. And gardeners, as well as parents raising children, know this meaning and value of each increment of time more than many others in many other roles. But there are countless roles where such timing is critical. And in any moment, that mature soul knows this particular moment is the perfect moment in which a specific phase essential to all future phases unfolds. Jesus, when he was here, he never ceased to remind those who were eager to enter into the kingdom as they understood it or misunderstood it more often. And actually, all of us, it seems, here in this call are anticipating a future moment. And yet none of us really knows. Each of us has seen fragments of this moment. And even the fragment of that moment is so profound as to move a soul in a direction of eternal significance. But Jesus, when he was walking around and they were saying, let's go take the kingdom, or whatever the moment, he said, no, the hour hasn't come. Always willing to defer to the Father's will, which could be called the time flow of the eternal, because the Father knows the entire story and knows what is absolutely essential in each moment. And so I would just say, with all of our anticipation, is to just seize this moment and every moment and relax our sense of eagerness to attain or to see or to witness. Because as our Magisterial Son has said over and over, it's happening right now. And actually, anyone with eyes to see can see that in the world at large, as disturbing as sometimes it may be. We're watching every moment unfold this event of eternal significance for our planet. And we are each vital components of it. Whether we are seen walking with him, whenever that may occur, or not, we will have our place in this larger hand of cosmic destiny that the Father holds so easily, and of which the Magisterial Son, the Lucifer Rebellion, any planetary part is but just that, a part of a much greater story. But getting to know one individual is like getting to know the whole story, because each one of us is a microcosm, an infinitesimal microcosm of the infinite macrocosm. And so it is, we spiritualize our personalities by getting to know yet another person, sowing the seeds of love and extending the light we are right now and in every moment. So with that, I will close and invite questions or comments. But I just want to thank you for all of you for being here. And it's a real treat that I don't get to experience very often.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
Rob.
being with us, Rob, so much. And I just want to remind everybody about Rob's work of archiving transmissions at his website. I sent you all the link. And if you haven't been there, I really urge you to go there and look at the riches of Rob's work over 10 years. So thank you, Rob. Thank you. And anybody, in order to ask Rob questions, or even if you like, ask the group of speakers questions, follow up, or comments, please.
I'd like to comment on follow up with Chris. When he was talking about the astronauts, I'd given that some thought myself about how they were able to tune into that flow of love and connect with unity. You know, if you take all the colors of the rainbow, all the sparkly, brilliant, perfectly illuminated colors, and mix them all together, you wind up with mud. So the astronauts getting out into space many, many miles away from any other human being and being highly dependent for their survival on many, many others, and they got to be consciously aware of that, to have an appreciation for all those many other people who are keeping them alive, in that state, that there you can connect with that unity of humanity.
From my impressions of Ed Mitchell explanation of that, it was almost like he was so busy pushing buttons and communicating with the ground that, you know, it was just in these moments where he wasn't doing that, that he was looking out the window and he had this panoramic view of, you know, the earth and the moon and the sun coming up around him. And so it was in those times when he was not distracted by his survival, but by the extreme beauty of what he saw. And I think when you see something, you know, the Creator, he calls us to perfection. And when he does that, it's because he wants to he wants us to share our experience with him, but he qualifies that as experiences that are derived from truth, beauty, and goodness. And so I think when we bring our human mind to that place where we are awe-inspired with beauty, such as what he was seeing out his window, That was the point where I believe he was making contact with his thought adjuster. He brought his mind to the soul level where the adjuster speaks. And at that point, it is just like it's an infusion. It is like a unity that happens. You just have this different perspective about everything at that point. And, we can achieve that same state ourselves. We don't have to be out in space to see it. We can be in a beautiful place in nature and just be so grateful and thankful and see all the grandeur around you and say, Father, share this moment with me, or save this in my soul for eternity. It is so beautiful. Your creation, it's a realization of this bigger moment, this unifying feeling that you have. So I think, we can all achieve that. We can all experience that. But we have to bring our minds down into the heart. And that's where the adjuster speaks to us, is in the heart.
Thanks, Chris.
That reminds, am I still talking here?
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, we hear you.
That reminds me of an expression. It's not in the Urantia book. It's one of many I've encountered, but that wholeness is a state of indivisibility. But we can't know of our own wholeness until we see it everywhere. And that's a challenge, it sounds like, but it's actually an invitation to simply walk with God, who is showing us the wholeness of every moment, in every place, in every person. And the more focused we are upon that, everything that appears contrary, we see through it, because that's what we're called to do as, well, really, we've been trained as teachers. And education is about leading forth from within. And that wholeness is fully present in every moment and in every person, in every place. But it does take the art of vision, which is the art of seeing the invisible. It's not just sight, it's vision that sees through this veil of perception and calls forth the light in every moment and in every person, more importantly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm reminded today I was taking a message from a celestial teacher, and they were talking about when we see ourselves in the future achieving, this higher realm or higher state of consciousness, or more perfected state of consciousness. We are sharing that with the thought adjuster. When we have thoughts like that, where it's thoughts about progress, the thought adjuster sees this. He sees what you see, and he puts light in the field, meaning he is the operator of our spiritual world. He puts light in the field to bring that into manifestation. But the second part of that is, what happens is, it's a question to the universe, and the answer is manufactured, and it comes to us in the form of an opportunity for us to make a decision. And so our ascension is like a breadcrumb trail of putting light into the field, and then stepping into the opportunities, making decisions, which leads us to actual progress. We can virtually understand progress, But until we actually experience it, we do not progress. Interesting to think about. And this ties right into the theme of this meeting today about seeing yourself in the future.
Yeah. Well, you know, Chris, that reminds me, one of the most profound experiences with our Magisterial Son that it's hard to say most profound. Profound moments are infinitely profound, it seems like. But it was a case where I won't go into many details that preceded it, but it was a feeling of being outside of a circle. And I knew I was in, but for whatever reason, I felt apart from it, apart from him. And as soon as I thought that, can you still hear?
Yes.
As soon as I thought that, he appeared, you might say, not visually, but in the mind, and said, "So you think we're far from one another?" And he said, "Let me show you how close we are." Well, he proceeded to do what I'm convinced he will do for the entire world. And that is he said effectively, and he made, in some way I don't understand, made experienceable. He said, this is how you are seen in paradise. And I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed because it was light that shone through everything. Dimensions of being that I didn't know existed. And I felt the touch of that light in these unknown, dark places. Some of them perhaps from the past, others from the future. It mattered not. They were all present. And then he said, now, the only question is, can you embrace this as we do? Well, honestly, I had to pause.
Yeah.
Because it was overwhelming. You know, I just said, I don't know if, I'm thinking this, I don't know. But then I realized, well, you wouldn't ask me to do something that I can't do. And so I said, sure, of course I will. But there was that pause. It was the pause of a human awareness of a limitation that was simultaneously being transcended. But I must say, I wept. I on and off, not entirely, 24 hours a day, but for at least a couple of weeks afterwards, because I could feel this mercy. It was the mercy that he will administer to the world. But it's not without the challenge of each participant and each person to embrace that mercy as he does. And that entails a lot of self-forgiveness, first of all, and then the willingness to extend that forgiveness likewise to each person and in each condition of the, there's so many ugly things were being shown right now in the world. And yet we're called to extend that mercy and love through that veil of perception into the heart of whatever it is, the person, the place, the thing, anything. And it's a really beautiful thing that's unfolding right now. It's just extraordinary. And, you know, your description of unity consciousness, you know, I mean, that experience of mine reminds me of it, except that I couldn't see, I could only feel that light. And, you know, it's like I could feel the omnidimensional nature of the soul. And it was overwhelming. And I know that this is what we're called into being, an extension of his mercy in every relationship, in every moment. It is the judgment of the world, but it's not judgment as the world has envisioned it. Well, the word apocalypse means disclosure. That's what it really is. It's a full disclosure of the reality of our shared being. And some will reject it.
Yeah.
Some will say, no, I can't embrace that. I won't embrace that. That's probably what some will say. There isn't a can't, really, you know, an inability. There's no one, they could feel unable, but they are not unable. If they have a faint desire, it will be empowered. And that's the flicker of faith, that faint flicker.
Yeah.
It will operate and it will extend throughout the world. Well, anyway, I didn't intend to talk about that.
That was great. Thank you, Rob.
Actually,
I remember having that conversation with you when last time we met. And
That's the only time we've met in person.
Yeah.
That I remember. Well, yeah. Well,
I wanted to say that it's a lot of suspense for me was, would you share that experience with us that several of us know that you just described? So thanks for doing it. It's a, you know, it's a personal and private experience. So I appreciate it very much. And it's really edifying for us to hear that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here and encouraging us, each of us. We're all encouraging one another. You know, we don't share spiritual experience to convince somebody that doesn't, you know, is just like in total disbelief. We share it to encourage those who do and who are part of this experience, you know. So anyway.
I'd like to share something. I appreciate what David shared earlier about love. And as you were sharing your quotes out of the Urantia book, a lot of memories came back as to other thoughts about the power of love and uniting. And what Robert was just talking too of experience. I know my former church affiliation, not knowing the Urantia book at the time, I set a goal to be made perfect by perfecting my love, as the Bible talks about. That, and it says, a perfect love, there's no fear, for perfect love throws fear outside. And when we're in that unity of love, we're fearless. We're fearless about anything. You know, we might have a respect for something. And I'd like to share a thought here. I noticed a lot of the sisters here. You can relate to this, I'm sure. In that state that Robert's talking about, or David talks about, when you're aglow with your children, when you're pregnant, carrying a child, or getting married, before the wedding. You're in that state of love. And I know I've experienced a situation where you have a vision shift. Everything's the same, but it's not the same. There's wonder in it all. There was a song about that, by the Carpenters, about talking about being in love. There's magic in everything I see. And the power of love to put us in that state with our thought adjuster, you're in love with everything. And I just wanted to share that concept. I can think about those experiences of your childbirth, your wedding, your relationships, when you have that aglowness, as it's called in society. You're just a glow, you radiate. And be in that state and reminisce on it and feel those feelings. Anyway, that's I wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Sound like the voice of God there.
I told you he was a powerful mystic. This is the official end of our 90 minutes, and so if anyone needs to go, but yeah, everybody's welcome to stay. And this is open mic now for comments and questions. I have just a little story to tell. I was long ago, I received the manuscript for the book, The Power of Now, when I was a publisher and had a real publishing operation, and we could have published that book, but I'm notorious because I turned it down, and somebody else published that book, and they sold millions of copies. And I thought of the book as a little bit shallow, and in the sense it was just talking about the present moment without the opening we have about presence from the Urantia book, which has inclusive of the sort of the past and the present past and the future in the present moment. And I kind of said, well, what about the power of then? This is sort of too narrow in a way of a discussion, but it turned out that was a book that everybody needed. And I just want to say, though, that for us, we're talking about our experiences, our spiritual experiences. And there's a distinction that I'm hoping we're going to come out of this with, is that there is this power of then, which is the power of the future, reflecting back on this moment. And that's a power, it's a collective experience, and as well as a personal experience. And I'll add one more thing, which is that when people have near-death experiences, these NDEs are something like what Rob just shared with us, that who we really are right now is shared with us as others see us. In an NDE, we see ourselves through the eyes of everybody else. That's one of the most salient reports that we get about NDEs, right? So life review is presented to us. And I think that's a little bit what Rob is talking about, that happened to him. But I also want to appeal to the sort of power of then is respect to all of us. We're going to have an experience of humanity's karma, you might say, all at once. I think that's my view of this, is we're going to feel the collective mind and what the Supreme Being, how the Supreme sees all of us right now. That's a hypothesis I have. And I think this event, or this moment of equilibrium, may be not just personal. It's going to be personal, but it's also going to be a collective. And one more thing, I guess what Barbara was saying, Barbara Kazin was saying, is it's an illumination of conscience. So it's going to bring forward for you your imperfections. And I think also humanity is going to be able to have some insight about its imperfections, not in this sort of terrible sense of sin, but that this is what we need to do now. This is where we're going now. And we're being shown by our divine parents where we need to go in this moment. So I just throw those things out for open mic discussion, and everything else we've discussed in the last 90 minutes, and anyone can
Byron,
chime in. Yes, please.
I have an open question for anybody and everybody.
Yes, Rich.
How would they, oh, what happened?
No, we hear you.
Oh, okay. Now it wasn't lit up. How would you put Biden's comment about Putin being a killer into the context of this conversation?
Just give us a little more context to Rich for those not following the news. That President Biden said that Putin.
Oh, okay.
That was a few
Wait a
days.
second, where'd I go? Here I am.
You're there.
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, we see. it. Yeah.
Okay, so for those who aren't aware, the President of the United States was being interviewed by George Stephanopoulos and gratuitously volunteered that he thought President Putin of Russia is a killer. So you all have articulated the most positive imaginable expressions of positive energy and love. And I, being who I am, came up with this question because I see great difficulty in embracing. Oh, I have no trouble embracing what you say, but I have great difficulty believing that you're accurate. So this is why this horrible comment of implying potential for nuclear war in the offing, the near offing, came to my consciousness. So, Robert?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because I just watched Putin's reply to him in full. Of course, the US president was not addressing him directly. He was speaking directly to a reporter. But he also reiterated what has been articulated by other, what we call leaders in the United States, that this same Russian president is without a soul. Well, this Russian president replied in a very calm, dignified way and said, you know, there was a story we used to tell each other as children in the playground, that when we call each other names, we're really calling ourselves a name. We're just simply projecting onto others what we perceive about ourselves. Now, he didn't, that was a kind of a subtle way of, of saying that he knows that we are one being and that we cannot engage in a judgment of one facet of this infinite being that each personality is without denying our access to the whole being. And that's what this is the beauty of this moment. We're watching ugliness, if you want to allow the term, ugliness become visible. It's being disclosed. Corruption.
Can't hear you. Robert, I can't hear you.
Just mute on your end, Rich, because I think there's a background music or background sound.
Sounds like a kindergarten going through the hall there. Since we were speaking of children, I thought I heard children's voices passing by.
Right.
I'm in Whole Foods. I'm in a public place. Sorry.
That explains it all. Children are passing by. In any event, this is the beauty of this apocalypse, if you will, this disclosure. We're being shown progressively, and for many persons, it's overwhelmingly horrible. corruption that has never been recognized before. There are terms that I can't even pull out of my head that are so ugly, you know, the descriptive terms of perfidy, or I don't know what else. You know, we're watching this unfold. The challenge for as many persons as are able is to see through it and to affirm the light emerging from beneath that dark surface. And it's a necessary stage of you know, it's coming to terms with a darkness with which we have been immersed without knowing it. We had become normalized in a state of darkness that was so profound, a large part of our being was shut down. And now it is being exposed. And it must be exposed in order for people to affirm, extend loving understanding that doesn't approve of any of this. It just understands the historic context within which this has occurred. And with that understanding of a divine love, we can transcend each one of these disclosures of ugliness. And it's necessary to step through the dark forest. You know, it just...
Robert, I appreciate your answer. It's an excellent response. And I do want to acknowledge Putin, along with you, Putin's brilliance and soul mastery in how beautifully he handled it. My question is for all of you again, why is there this darkness?
Can I speak at this point?
Please do.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that, you know, one thing I kept on hearing from Manjornson right at the advent of Trump actually being elected was that he called it the perfect storm. And I think I shared that transmission publicly. But, you know, that term perfect storm really describes what you're talking about, Rob, and the apocalypse being disclosure, because so many people were so unaware of how divided, for instance, America was, you know, the United States was in terms of who they are. And I do think we have to walk through this and walk through it, though, always, like you said, with that underlying feeling that there's actual progress going on spiritually on this planet, and that we are so fortunate in having the Urantia book and our spiritual relationships with spiritual beings to be able to see that is really where we should be going. That really is our job as teachers, is to share that, to remind people, no, you know, we are making progress. And I find myself saying that a lot to people nowadays. But I wanted to share something else, and this is kind of getting off a little bit. It's about gratitude. And gratitude saved me. Gratitude absolutely saved me from the loss of my husband 11 years ago. That was a dark road for a long, long time. And I found a book, and I just want to share a couple books in case people are interested. One is called this 5-minute gratitude journal. And the reason I want to share this is that I've decided I'm going through this whole written reflection piece. I've started a health journal. I'm starting this gratitude journal. And I found some sources here, but this one I love because it has all kinds of prompts in it. So you're not sitting there looking at yourself and saying, what am I grateful for today? You know, what are the 3 things I am grateful for today? And this book, I just got it today. In fact, it has so many things, like so many prompts to help you every single day. It gives you 6 prompts, like a valuable lesson I learned from a difficult situation, a reason to smile right now, someone I get to spend time with today. And it really deepens your feelings of gratitude. And so I wanted to share that. It's called the 5-Minute Gratitude Journal. And the other one, the self-care one that I found, is all about you record and then you reflect. And so it has places in there for you to add your tracking habits that tie into what Dave said. It starts off with the intention of the day. It goes on for you to talk about how you slept and what kind of dreams you had, and a place to where you can share your dreams. It goes on to describe your meals and your water and your exercise, and then other activities you can check that you've done. And then it goes on to talk about how you really feel. And you can mark and talk about that. And things that were fun today, things that were hard or stressful, kind things I did for myself, and then a mood chart. And those are on 2 pages. So this one is called Self-Care. And I just felt like I wanted to share these through this whole presentation because I just got these, and they're both, I think if you're looking for tools, these 2, the 5-Minute Gratitude Journal and the Self-Care, I have found, I think they're going to be really wonderful. And I think they're going to be part of my divine moment for the day. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Vicki.
Can I share something?
Oh.
No, Brenda, go ahead. Go ahead, honey.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Hi, Melinda. Nice
Hi.
to see you here.
Good to see you, honey.
So just in the last couple of minutes, the thought that came through from the conversation is that what is the most important thing right now? And that is to see Jesus walking around. And since we know Jesus from the Urantia book, we know that what he did was to commune with our Father. And so knowing that, I'm now going to tell about an experience that I had twice. And some of you were there, which I find interesting. So in 2000, there was an association conference on Staten Island. Anyone there? Okay. And so, we would go into the hall and we had these wonderful presentations. And after one of the presentations, and I don't even remember what it was, we all stood up and applauded. And there was just so much joy floating through the room. And all of a sudden, as I stood there, this is how I have to explain it. A shaft of light came right into my head, through my body, and out my solar plexus. Well, that was very interesting. Nothing else was going on around. And so I let it be. I just let it be. I didn't try to tell anybody. I experienced it. And so then in 2006, maybe, I don't know, somebody there might know, Henry might know when it was. Rob may know what year it was when we were at Celestial Seasons, Celestial Nights at Cape San Blas, but we weren't at Fred Harris's place where we had been in years before. We were at, I think it was called St. George. Does anyone recall that was a different place? And we were in an upstairs room after hours, many of us gathering and receiving. And after it was over, all of a sudden, this shaft of light came through and out again. And again, it was not overwhelming. it was, oh, I remember when that happened before, and that was it. And so that was some time ago now, but now I realize that that is just an experience for me to show me that all I have to do is be receptive to the light coming in and then just let it out. And that's what Jesus did as he walked around. And so that's all we have to do. We have to open ourselves up to that light and be in the world, but not of it. And that way you don't see those things that are going on. You're aware of them, but you don't see them with judgment. You see them as humanity. And so just keep on what you're doing and ask for the help and just spread the love, because that's all that we can do. We just take what is given to us and then we put it out there. And you know that there are people there who are going to go, oh no, oh no. And it's not that you've done or said anything, you're just being. But there are many, many more people who are out there who are just hungering for it, thirsting for it, just waiting for it. And so just be there now, be here now, and just do it. Thank you. Thank you. I love you all.
Thanks, Brenda.
This morning, Monjorensen said 2 words that struck me. He said, please be patient and gentle with your brothers and sisters that see differently than you do right now. And I thought that was a wonderful guide for us. And Rob, I wanted to thank you for mentioning just getting close to an individual, which has been really hard to do during the pandemic. And I think a lot of people have suffered from a lack of companionship and closeness. And I like to remember that what they tell us in the Urantia book is that everything, a lot of things that we do are scaffolding except relationships.
Right.
Relationships endure, and we will remember them, and they will remember us in the Urantia world. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because part of Byron's focus on our group is to reach out to our brothers and sisters and help them, especially in this hour where there's so many people that are suffering spiritually, materially, and just in fear of COVID. Hopefully we're getting through that, but I'm glad you brought that connection in, that touching another individual is touching God.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sure.
I'd like to piggyback on something that was brought up by Chris, and that was the story about Edgar Mitchell. As soon as you were talking about that, I was reminded that I read about him in a book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart. I do energy medicine, and so I was really looking for some help in trying to explain the kind of work I did, and I was drawn to her book. Well, in that book, she talks about Edgar Mitchell and his experience up in space, and it really touched me. But what further sort of underlined that whole experience and the way she spoke about it was see him in one of the movies. It was either The Secret or The Living Matrix, where he actually was speaking about his experience. And he said, I'm not a very religious man. And it wasn't like seeing the face of God, but I felt complete love and unity. I felt an immediate connection to the rest of the world. And I have to tell you that it's something that I carry with me. It was powerful in reading it in the book, but having him explain his experience and talking about it. And he's no longer with us, but I've gone back to some of the movies that he was part of, and he always talks about that moment when he looked out the window and he felt this immediate connection. And it's just always stayed with me because I think I have felt that in my life. Grew up in California, but spent every other summer in Yosemite. And Yosemite to me has always been that place where I felt incredibly connected to the world. And it gave me, it just illuminated so many senses and feelings that I had. And it was a place of great spirituality to me, even as a child. So hearing this other human being talking about this experience that he had in space, saying, I'm not a religious person, however, and it wasn't like seeing the face of God, but I felt this incredible unity and this incredible connection and love. And it just stayed with me. So it's kind of a magical moment to go back and remember that feeling because it really did have an impact on me.
You mentioned Yosemite, and I just brought to mind in study group last night, we were discussing, not last night, the night before, we were discussing the Supernathum, and the different orders of angels. And someone brought up the fact that, well, there's a group of them not too far from here. And I thought, what happened? And it's supposed, there's a belief among Urantia readers that that's the headquarters that has been established. Did any of you know that?
I've heard it before. I've heard that.
Well-established tradition that near where you live in the, what's the name of the major park there?
Yosemite.
Yeah.
Yosemite, but it's in a particular grove. I forgot what was the, I should know that.
Mariposa.
Mariposa.
Mariposa Grove. We had a function there, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, where about 30 Urantia book readers, we went up and we stayed up there. And then we had a prayer service at the base of this tree. And it was so lovely. We had the musicians, we had poetry, we had prayers, and there were constant tourists going by. And I don't know what they were thinking we were doing, but I felt that connection. It was really quite wonderful. Diane LeBrecq organized it for us. It was a great experience.
Yeah, for me, it's always been a high point in my life, spending time there.
Yeah, I want to chime in real quick. I'm a space lawyer and ufologist, and one of the things I discovered 30 years ago was a book by Michael White called The Overview Effect. It describes in great detail the experiences of the astronauts that has been alluded to now 3 times by 3 different people. So Mike White, it's called The Overview Effect. It's shift in consciousness, the transnational perspective that the astronauts felt, not all of them, but many of them had this epiphany, this collective experience, which you have alluded to. So I thought I'd share that with the group.
I'd like to share a bit with the group as well. I really appreciate all the stories about how you all have allowed Heavenly Father's energy to flow through. I have a quote that I copied. I don't know where in the book it is, but I'd like to read it to everybody. The minds of evolutionary creatures originate in the local universe and must gain divine perfection by achieving those experiential transformations of spiritual attainment, which are the inevitable result of a creature choosing to do the will of the Father in heaven. And when Brenda shared her story, that you're doing what Heavenly Father is asking us all to do. Also, this morning I was reading the Urantia book on page 1439. I'd like to kind of skip through it and read some quotes because it has to do with how the human personality can transcend the sequential time zone that we're much involved with. He was talking to a Mithraic priest on the way to Rome on Crete, and they were asking about time and whatnot. about immortality, time, and eternity. On the inhabited worlds, human personality, indwelt and oriented by the Paradise Father Spirit, is the only physically related reality which can transcend the material sequence of temporal events. Goes on, but as man ascends, as he progresses inward, the enlarging view of this event procession is such that it is discerned more and more in its wholeness. That which formerly appeared as a succession of events then will be viewed as a whole and perfectly related cycle. In this way will circular simultaneity increasingly displace the one-time consciousness of the linear concepts of events. Ultimately, surviving mortals achieve identity in a seven-dimensional universe. And as personality passes on upward and inward to the transcendental levels of deity likeness, the time-space concept will increasingly approximate the timeless and spaceless concepts of the absolutes. So I was reading that this morning and so relevant, I wanted to share it.
Very
Thank you.
happy. You guys, I'd like to introduce something. Actually, I'd like to maybe ask us to steer in the direction next time we meet to the social sustainability or social change aspect of the magisterial mission, because we've done such a wonderful job, which Urantia book readers usually do, at talking about mysticism and spirituality. But there's a need to ground this discussion in the conditions of the planet right now. And there really are kind of two schools of thought in the magisterial mission. One is more on the mystical side of things, and the other is more on the social change side of things. So we haven't really discussed the social political issues tonight, and that wasn't the intention. But I want to ask folks to think about whether you'd like to do that next time. And the best way to go about that is to invite, we've had Daniel Raphael with us, and he's really a spokesperson for social change, social sustainability, as being the heart of the magisterial mission. And that is that school of thought. We haven't really touched on it tonight, but there's some of the people in his group that are really, really working hard on that now. And want to know if folks would like to have those folks come back, one of them come in particular, I'm thinking, or two of them, to talk about the 7 values of social sustainability, how we can transform the institutions of the planet, and the governance of the planet, and bring these energies we're talking about, because we tend to almost forget about the needs of the poor, the needs of other cultures that are oppressed, immigrants at the border, you name it, and there's so many big issues that really should be tackled by the magisterial mission. So does anybody have any thoughts on that before we close?
Yeah,
Yes.
I have some thoughts.
Yep.
We need, Rob, I'm sorry. First, we need sustainable humans before we can have social sustainability. And I think an event like the Day of Equilibrium would be the catalyst that would launch social sustainability into a reality, because right now we see so many things that seem impossible with the way the world is currently. Do you agree with that, Rob?
Well, I'm glad you said that. Yes, I would just kind of compliment what you said by saying that the only thing that's really sustainable is what is eternal. And until individuals eternalize, or as they are eternalizing, they're becoming sustainable. And as they are, because that which is most deeply personal is simultaneously the most significant political event in the cosmos. They're one and the same. That's why spirituality is defined, not defined, but described as at once the measure of our nearness to God and usefulness to our fellows. There is no separation. The separation is only in the minds of those who see it as separate. You know, the poles of religion and politics are largely confined to symbols, institutional symbols, where we can say that's religion over there and that's politics over there. And usually they're domed buildings. Those are just symbols. The religion, the real religion, as we know, is the experience of growing in love with God and simultaneously with our fellows. And the real politics is in the context of family life. That's where the most intense political negotiations occur. And they're manifest on the collective level in the relationships, international, well, we call them international. They're institutional relations, they cross national boundaries. So yes, I would just only underscore what you've said, Chris. Sustainable individuals are those who are eternalizing. And there is no separation, but there are those who focus upon certain facets of that phenomenon. It's a phenomenon to our minds. It's reality in the mind of God, that which is most deeply personal is that which is most cosmically significant. And that's the progress of the kingdom of heaven, which transcends every border of every kind. And it always has and always will.
Yeah. If we're speaking about light and life, governments actually go away in the later stages, right? I mean, we don't need them anymore.
It's a exercise in coordination.
Yeah.
It's coordinating interests in a way that it's very beautiful. It's like a dance. Now, you know, hey, we're at a very, I describe it as the late tribal stage of political evolution. Operating on a global scale with tools that are extremely dangerous, that are held in the hands of children that don't know what they're working with. But that's part of the condition of our humanity. And that's what's being corrected.
I like to add on to that, the Heavenly Father gave free will to mankind. And I think one of our collective lessons is that not all of us are responsible enough to handle free will because of the way it affects others.
Well, it's not free will, it's imposing your will on others. That's the problem.
Yeah. See, everyone is given free will. I use the words liberty and freedom as two different things. One is existential. It's an existential gift of the Creator. Our freedom, whether it's personal or collective, is an experiential attainment. And it's simply really the unfolding of the exercise of that liberty which were given by the Creator. And yes, there are limitations on, there are constraints on the exercise of free will contingent upon the degree of divinity attainment. You know, as we ascend, we're given greater responsibilities. You know, that's a fact of life. But there's free will is our innate gift. We're born with it. We can't, it's inalienable as it's been described, you know. Freedom, however, is not inalienable. It's earned. it's achieved.
So far, I think the discussion is steering away from my proposal. That's what I've
Can
interpreted.
I suggest something, Byron?
Certainly, I haven't heard from you,
Uh,
please.
Yeah, well, I would love to, but I have an example of that right now. So here's a gritty thing. On January 6th, two things happened that I know. And one, we all know about the attack on the Capitol building. The other was the election of John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock in Georgia as senators. And that's what I wanted to talk about. So the other day, maybe some of you know this, but Raphael Warnock gave his maiden speech in the Senate. Did anybody see it? Do you know who he is? Okay, Raphael Warnock is the new senator from Georgia. He's from the same church as Martin Luther King. He is the reverend in charge of that. So you're aware of who he is. So I highly recommend that you go to C-SPAN, or we could provide a link, to listen to his speech, which ended up being considered one of the best speeches ever given in the Senate, especially as a maiden speech.
Wow.
He got a standing ovation, and I'll read you a couple lines from it. And it deals with this issue of democracy, which is foundational to everything. And I shared it with Barbara, and Barbara picked out these two quotes from it. He says, "A vote is like a prayer of how we want to see the world for our children. And a political ideal is a spiritual concept." And then he closes with these lines, which I found pretty direct in terms of where he's coming from. As he says, "As I close, let me say that as a man of faith, I believe that democracy is the political enactment of a spiritual idea. The sacred worth of all human beings, the notion that we all have within us a spark of the divine and the right to participate in the shaping of our destiny. Humanity's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but humanity's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary."
Thank you.
And that he is describing, obviously, that there's two agendas going on. And one is the personal connection we have with the Father, through the adjutant mind spirits, the universe mother spirit. We're part of the evolution of truth, beauty, and goodness into the supreme, which requires our voices to be heard. And the obvious apocalyptic reality we're facing is that is not part of the pattern of the planet. And even the United States, which is supposedly the example of that pattern of providing each individual the right to speak his mind and sharing that with a vote of the way the world should go. And without the support of institutions, we don't get there. The institutions are neutral. We are the ones that are here to bring light to the institutions. The supreme angels of the institutions require us to join in. So it's honorable for those that can hold the light to be in those institutions. And Warnock is a wonderful example of that. As a preacher, as an activist, as one who comes out of poverty and oppression, he speaks to those issues on the shore of the the floor of the Senate and the Capitol Dome, which I believe is part of our evolutionary growth towards light and light. As we get closer together and share our commonality and our love for each other, those institutions only become filled with light. So I would love to do that sort of discussion in the future.
Thank you, Steve. And I want, since you brought up January 6th, I happen to have been been there as covering it as a journalist. I was outside the Capitol building about 750 feet from the events. Later, a video came out showing remember the guy with the horns that was one of the ringleaders invading the Capitol building? They got into the Senate room, as you know, and the media doesn't tend to show this. I've only seen it in one place. But when they got to the dais of the Senate, they had a very pious prayer led by the guy, the horn guy. And he actually gave a very articulate prayer. I thought it was kind of impressive. And people bowed their heads and they prayed from inside the Senate, which they just invaded violently. And they had a kind of a religious experience. It was really moving. And you can find that, if you go to my website, you'll see the article I wrote. It's in my blog. It's at evolvingsouls.org. So there's a link there that shows the video. But what I would appeal to everybody is that having a religious experience is not sufficient to bring us to democracy and justice. You have to convert that in various ways. And I believe part of the magisterial mission is a teaching on how to do that. So it's not really sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. These guys were having a religious experience after taking over the Senate. So that I don't know if that's going to work to just simply make that kind of an appeal. I put that out as a conundrum, very hard to solve. I think that also the people that did that insurrection, if you want to call it that, thought they were doing it because they had a religious experience that led them. I'll tell you why I think that, because I was there and all around me were people who had Christian sympathies, Christian, emblems and people carrying crosses even. And so they thought they were doing God's will, in what they were doing. So I don't think it's enough. And that's why we have the Urantia book filling us in on the history of the planet, history of civilization, politics, human rights, world government. These things are also part of that. So I think that needs to be brought into the discussion. And so again, I put that out. We're running kind of late now, but if anybody has further thoughts, and we should probably close after a couple of people. If we have anybody that hasn't spoken yet, we'll give a priority to, but if not, just Rob maybe could close that, and maybe we'll stop there. And people can, let me know what you think we should do next time, whether we should move into that direction or not. We don't have to.
I have a quick comment to make.
Yes, thank you, Linda.
My church background is very involved in politics and have a lot to say about social justice. And I recently had a chance to have a reading with Donna Dinglio. And what came out was the distinction between divine justice and social justice. And the divine justice is really about the mercy of God that takes some of the rage and the edge off. And so I've been playing around with that for about a month in my head, and I want to do some more thinking and writing about that. But if that could be part of the next time's discussion, I would appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I've been outside the United States, thankfully, to get a different perspective on political and international relations. living in parts of the world where the term democracy has been used as a justification for supporting anything but democracy. This is an interesting topic of which I'm very interested in. However, I think it's helpful for us as we contemplate what appears to be a polarity in the sense of you have described, Byron, between religion and politics, or spirituality and social justice, these poles of the personal collective. That source of their union already exists. The union exists, and interestingly enough, in this world, we have first, at least to historic consciousness, received a revelation of the very discreetly personal relationship of the Father to each child. It's personal spirituality. Well, spirituality is personal, but I mean, the point is that in most worlds, at least according to the description of the Urantia papers, that's not the first thing. They're immersed in social formation. They're immersed in team, socialization. Well, this magisterial mission and the Magisterial Son is a representative of the Son, a unique and vivid representation of the Son. And it is the Son, actually, as Dave and I have been discussing, the eternal mother Son. It's that maternal role that holds the collective together. And it's that which the Father has delegated to those sons he has entrusted with that. And the union of the personal and the collective is perfectly integrated by the action of the conjoint spirit, the infinite spirit, the conjoint actor. And it's my opinion, based upon my experience with those beings describing themselves as Trinity teacher sons, that part of Michael's plan for this world and for this very unusual magisterial mission is to have every form of paradise representation operating on the planet simultaneously, because it is necessary. It is necessary to address the very thing you have raised, this apparent polarity that appears sometimes irreconcilable. And yet there's no contest and there's no difficulty, because the Son, on whose shoulders the government rests, this supreme magistrate that is magisterial son, very experienced magisterial son at that. It is his execution of justice. It's a form of justice that has been described in the Urantia book as describing the first magisterial son as bringing to an end a period of suspended justice. And nothing describes this world better, in my opinion, than the suspension of justice to achieve the revelation of mercy. And it's mercy to those who have been the source of the very, very difficult and cruel circumstances that have occasioned these extraordinary events, that have mandated effectively unusual methods to be employed. And so as we host preconceived notions of what will be, we need to suspend those at least lightly and hold them lightly and not too heavily, because whatever it is, it's going to be beyond our imagination, beyond anything we could imagine. And in Michael's words, it'll be something that will thrill our hearts. You know, and so I won't be at this gathering because I'm going to probably be back on track to another part of the world. But I wish you well in this, and I trust you know that these poles are perfectly balanced, and they will become more fully manifest as perfectly balanced in this world as it is in worlds on high.
Well, maybe we should end on that high note.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you to our speakers, Dave. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody. It's been 2.5 hours. So the recording will go out soon, and this discussion will probably go on of the apparent polarities for a few decades. So we're just getting started, everybody. And unless there's anybody else that has any announcement or something else finally to share that's very brief.
I just wanted to say hello and thank you, Byron, for doing this. Robert Davis, who I was looking for something that organized all the transmissions, and yeah, Danel site, amazing. I've been following Vicki and Chris's work for the last decade, and they've been all three of you have been such amazing teachers for me. So it's nice to see you all together on a call. I wondered how, like for the unity consciousness and all of what Ron Johnson is bringing, it's just been nice to participate in this, to see people all together. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. So good to see you. Thank you so much. Anyone else before we close?
Thank you. Fantastic.
Bravo.
God bless you, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy trails, Rob. Thanks.
Thank you so
See
much.
guys in another couple of months. Be well. God bless. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.